Hello there, this is Bic Benedict. We're playing The Last of Us, Grounded difficulty, and this is Left Behind. And just wanted to give an update for the guide. This is a no damage run. I have completed all the segments on no damage. A few things to pick up over here. Let's see, the first thing, you're going to have a quarter of a piece of scissors, a quarter of a rag, quarter of sugar, and a quarter of explosive. That you only get a quarter on this difficulty, and I have some tenets that I would like you all to abide by if you're doing this run, only because I don't want you to suffer on the final fight, which took me 4 hours, 5 if you count having to restart the whole campaign to get better supplies and make sure I didn't miss anything. Tenet the first: do not fire a single bullet until the final section. Tenet the second: do not fire an arrow that you cannot afterwards collect. So if you fire an arrow, even if you kill an enemy and the arrow breaks, reset the checkpoint. Make sure you don't lose any arrows. And Tenet the third: pick up everything. It goes without saying, and I believe I have picked up everything on this campaign. I've scoured every inch of the maps, and holy hell, this guide nearly had to be canceled. Now, on this section, I'm going to play it cheap, but it's going to go along with the first tenet that I mentioned about not firing a single bullet. You might be thinking to yourself, also bring a brick here. If you don't bring a brick here, it will be okay because they repopulate. But you might be thinking to yourself, well, Bic, I've played this on Survivor and now I'm trying to beat it on Grounded. And how you're telling me I'm not supposed to shoot? There's 4 stalkers here. What am I supposed to do? It's very simple. You throw a brick, you run at them and press either the square or triangle button. It doesn't matter which button. Get the drop. You'll only ever get 3, and that will put your count to 5. And what you next want to do is pick up this brick, throw it at the next stalker. I almost got hit there, but didn't take damage. And then that's half of the stalkers killed. No more bricks in this room. So what we're going to do is leave the entire area, and the stalkers do not come in here. They will run to the wall, but they won't come in here. So it doesn't matter. There's no threat in here. What we're doing is we're trying to conserve ammo, because believe me, you will need every shot you have in the final section. And it's rough. I got there and I was thinking, it won't be that easy because there's plenty of checkpoints to fall back on. But then when I got there, I remembered, they're pulling that shit where they don't give you any checkpoints. So you have to do the entire last section without any checkpoints. And it's much harder than the final part on the main campaign. I don't know where it's at the Fireflies headquarters. They don't give you a checkpoint either. But on that, you can skip a whole room of enemies. You can't skip anything on this last fight. So, check a bottle, stab her in the face, and then retreat out of this room. Is it cautious? Yeah, it really is cautious. Is it cheap? I wouldn't say it's cheap. Is it smart? You better believe it's smart. Because otherwise, you might be down to 1 or 0 bullets when everything's finished. Because I was looking at my Survivor guide, and I took shots on the stalkers. I got the drops, and I still had more bullets than I did on this part, and I never shot a bullet on this part. So I had 2 fewer bullets, meaning that they're very stingy with the drops on this game. They're very stingy with what they put in hiding places for you to pick up. Now, it's very easy to get to the final fight without taking a bullet, and it's very easy to get to the final part without wasting an arrow. I mean, you can use the arrows, but just make sure that you can pick up the arrow from the body that you shoot it into. There is a random percentage. It seems more of a favorable percentage more than anything. You'll get your arrow back. I think I would say 3 out of 4 That might be a little generous, but I'm feeling generous today because I beat this part and I didn't think I would. Like, anytime I can't beat anything, I'm always comparing it to the vanquished final bosses, which I tried to do today for an hour, and what do you think happened?
Right, how do you do this? Take the hose and
So,
siphon it up.
anyway. Oh yeah, what I was going to say, I lost my train of thought there.
No?
By the time you get to the final part, it is only possible to have the ability to craft one Molotov and one nail bomb. The nail bomb is indispensable, and if you're doing this, even if you're not doing it no damage, don't craft any med kits. They're extremely pointless because if you get grabbed, even at full health, you don't get a second chance. So, the reason this is no damage was simply because I did the final section and I didn't take damage. So if I had taken damage, I would have just accepted that because it's hard enough just to do it. And this would have been like a standard guide with damage. But since it happened that I did the fight without damage, good for me because that makes the guide have more credibility to it, and I like that, and I worked hard for it. I've done this campaign 3 times, but I really love this game. I got obsessed with this damn game. So anyway, when you come up here, you get a Molotov for free, which is very helpful, and you get 2 bullets. You never get more than 2. So at this point, it's only possible to have 5. On my survivor guide, I saw that I had 7. And I had fired some too, which means that even though the 2 bullet count drop was the same on Survivor, the enemies were more inclined to drop weapons or bullets, you know what I mean? Okay, so the next item we're going to collect is a quarter of alcohol. It's right here on the truck. So it's a gorgeous game. It's beautifully made. I hate the controller, and I think the sensitivity can be increased a little bit, even though I have it on max sensitivity. But I can't tell you how much I hate the PS4 controller. It's so uncomfortable. You go to press select and then you press something called share. I don't want to share my fucking game. Get the fuck off my back with that shit. And like the buttons are, I've said this many times, the buttons are so narrow that you can barely press them in the first place. And the gimmicky touchpad adds nothing but just a bunch of clutter. Now when I say that I have got all the items on this, I pretty much mean I have. I don't want to say 100% sure. I'm 99% sure that I have got all the items. Now, the collectibles, it doesn't matter about those. Those aren't going to help you beat anything, and we're not going for trophies. And if you think you're going to get a trophy for grounded mode, you're deceived, because this is just not a generation where that kind of talent is looked upon as something that should be rewarded, and it's a damn shame because I think a lot more people would try Survivor or Grounded. So this is one of the final parts of the chapter. Now there's 2 ways to you can crouch and graze the analog stick, or you can crouch. So you can crouch. I'll talk about that in a second, what just happened. Or you can crouch while aiming, but you have to be crouched and aiming, not aiming and standing. But what happens is, after you melee an enemy and stab them, even if you're crouched when you do it, watch what happens. Just watch here. You can grab this enemy quicker, by the way, and you can mantle over it without her hearing you. So I was crouched, I stabbed her, and then I'm standing erect. So do not move the left analog stick at all. So over here we have the a quarter pair of scissors, a quarter of an explosive, and a quarter of a rag. And then near the exit, there's going to be a quarter pair of scissors. But anyway, it's very important because it's easy for the enemy to hear you if you so much as move the analog stick coming off that stab. So the protocol is, while crouched, move forward, move towards the enemy, press square or triangle, do the stab, and then you'll be erect, and then do not move the left analog stick, because you have the temptation in your mind that I was just formerly crouched before I stabbed, so I can start moving again, but you can't because you're standing erect. So just let her come to a stop, press the circle button to crouch, and then proceed. That's been my downfall many a time, but now I know better. So this pet store is very simple. You're going to have the clickers patrolling. You're going to have 1, 2, 3 runners stationary. And so what is grounded mode? I think I've talked about it. They do put checkpoints in, but some of the long sections are not checkpointed. And I think on survivor mode, I did a sloppy job of doing it, even though they gave me, I think they give you 3 checkpoints on survivor. Or is that what it is? Survival? I think it's survival. So I've discussed this on my grounded mode, but if you would prefer to not graze the analog stick, or even you can use this gives you a wide field of view. This mode of walking is the same or equals grazing the left analog stick in any direction to strafe. And the flashlight has no bearing on enemies. And for the humans, you don't have to graze the analog stick. So these are just some tips. Now, when there's just one, you always want to have a brick as well, or a bottle. I prefer the brick, but it's the same thing. So what you do is you throw the brick. They're stunned for a pretty long duration. You run up to them and stab them, provided it's the last foe or he's isolated in another part of the map, and he won't get, he won't attract too much attention. But normally that causes too much disruption, and I don't think you can get away with it. So jump over here, and there's the scissors that I mentioned a moment ago, and that's the last drop, but not the last fight. And in the next chapter we will be getting the bow. It's also possible to get a shotgun, but I would prioritize trying to win the fight rather than trying to get a shotgun that you'll only have for about 30 seconds. And this is the next part. There's 2 clickers. It's a big room, and it seems odd that there's just 2 of these guys. But for the clickers, when they're unaware of you, you can just simply stab them in the back. And then when there's one left and you have a brick or a bottle, that's the death sentence for the last enemy, provided nothing janky happens, or you don't throw the bottle into part of the geometry. But I think it's also best to close in a certain amount of distance. Don't just start charging at them, is my opinion. And I don't mean to be nagging about this, but I'm just telling you that I struggled so much, 4 hours, like 4 or 5 hours, to do this fight, and I don't want you to have the same struggles. So just collect everything. For now, just collect everything. I will tell you what to fashion at the end, but you should realize it's pretty simple. You're going to be fashioning a Molotov and 1 nail bomb. So, shitter's dead. There's nothing to loot over here. Trust me. If you don't trust me, you can go searching around, pick up what you need to, but you won't be picking up anything except collectibles. And that is the end of this chapter. Like I've mentioned in the previous video, no even numbered chapters will be included because they're boring exposition which I wish could be skipped, because even though I realize and appreciate the need for exposition and the type of storytelling that exists in this DLC, when you've played it once, you just want to do the combat. As far as I'm concerned, I do not care about watching the story more than once. It's a fine story, but once is enough, and the combat is so satisfying that is what you want to do repeatedly. Take care.
Please be in here. Please be in here. I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you go.